My family was obsessed with the Innovatech Trust. They worked every day at the company my parents built, all while planning how to steal it. They spoke constantly about the missing heir, a ghost they needed to declare legally dead. They never once suspected that the heir was me, the 17-year-old poor relation they ignored at their own dinner table. For the last 3 years, I lived by one rule: be invisible. It was easy to do in my aunt and uncle's house. Their home was all white walls, polished steel, and cold glass. I was the one smudged fingerprint they constantly tried to wipe away. I was 17. This morning, like every morning, I woke up before them. I crept down the wide, floating staircase, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood. In the kitchen, the air already smelled sharp and bitter from the espresso machine my Aunt Helen had programmed to start at 6 a.m. I grabbed the end piece of a loaf of bread, the one they always left, and pushed it into the toaster. My cousins. Chloe and Liam came down first. Chloe was 19, already an intern in the marketing department at Innovatech. Liam, 21, was a junior analyst there. They both wore the unofficial uniform, sharp blazers, dark jeans, and expressions of mild boredom. They walked right past me. I was standing at the counter, but they looked through me. Dad said the board is getting nervous, Liam said, pulling a carton of orange juice from the stainless steel refrigerator. They're always nervous, Chloe said. She tapped on her phone, her nails making loud click-clack sounds against the screen. It's the deadline. The Founders' Trust expires in, 2 weeks? On the heir's 18th birthday, Liam confirmed. He drank straight from the carton. If this mystery kid doesn't show up, the whole company structure is up for grabs. Dad says it's chaos. My toast popped. The sound was too loud. Both of them jumped, finally noticing me. Chloe sighed, a puff of annoyance. Anya, you scared me. Sorry, I mumbled. Don't burn that, she said, nodding at my toast. It smells awful. I scraped the black edges into the sink and ate the rest plain. Aunt Helen and Uncle Marcus came in next. They were already in full business mode. Aunt Helen wore a severe gray dress, and Uncle Marcus was fixing his tie, a deep blue one with the small silver Innovatech I logo on it. I said, "Good morning, Anya," Aunt Helen said, not looking at me. She was already reading reports on her tablet. I didn't say anything, I said. Then say it. Good morning. Aunt Helen. Marcus, she said, ignoring my reply. The quarterly projections are thin, and this entire heir situation is giving the investors hives. We need to get ahead of it. I'm working on it, Uncle Marcus said. He grabbed a protein bar. Our legal team is looking for any angle. If the kid is a no-show by the 18th, the board has to act. We, as senior VPs and family, are the logical choice to stabilize the company. The founders were sentimental fools, Aunt Helen said. Her voice was flat. Locking up their shares in some romantic trust for a child? It was messy, irresponsible. I gripped the counter. The cold marble bit into my palms. She was talking about my parents. At least their mess is our opportunity, Liam said with a small smile. Don't speak about things you don't understand, Liam, Uncle Marcus snapped. Just get to the office on time. They all filed out, a wave of expensive cologne and ambition following them out the door. The heavy front door clicked shut. I was left alone in the silent, massive kitchen. They talked about the missing heir like a problem, a ghost, a myth. They worked every day at the company my parents built. They lived in this house, a house bought with the money my parents left in trust for them, a generous stipend to ensure their hardship in taking me in. They never once asked me about my parents. They never used my parents' names. I looked at the calendar on the wall. My 18th birthday was in 13 days. I finished my dry toast and went upstairs to my small room. I pulled an old laptop from under my bed. It was the only thing I owned that had belonged to my father. I opened it and logged into a private, encrypted email account. There was one new message. It was from Mr. Grayson, my parents' lawyer. Subject, the timeline. Message, Anya, they are making their move. They have filed a petition. We need to meet tomorrow. I closed the laptop. My hands were shaking. They weren't just waiting for the heir to be a no-show. They were actively trying to seize control. My uncle was right. They were looking for an angle, and I knew their angle was me. I told my aunt I was going to the library. It was the only place I was allowed to go without questions. I took the city bus, the smell of vinyl seats and diesel fumes filling my nose. I watched the sleek, expensive cars just like my uncle's, glide past us in traffic. The coffee shop was called The Daily Grind. It was small, crowded, and smelled like burnt coffee beans. I saw Mr. Grayson in a booth at the back. He stood up when he saw me. He was older, with kind eyes and a simple gray suit. He looked nothing like my uncle's sharp, predatory lawyers. "Anya," he said, and his voice was warm. He didn't offer to shake my hand, which I was grateful for. He just motioned to the seat. "Thank you for coming. Can I get you anything?" "Just water." "Please," I said. My voice sounded small. He signaled a waiter and ordered a water for me and a black coffee for himself. He waited until the waiter walked away. "You look so much like your mother," he said quietly. I flinched. It was the first time anyone had mentioned her in 3 years. I don't remember her very well," I lied. I remembered everything. Mr. Grayson's expression tightened, just for a second. He knew I was lying, but he didn't push. He opened his briefcase. "Anya, we don't have much time. Your uncle has formally petitioned the court." "What does that mean?" "It means he has asked a judge to declare the missing heir of the founders trust to be legally deceased, or, failing that, mentally incompetent." The room felt suddenly cold. "Incompetent? But they don't even know I'm the heir. How can they?" "They're not claiming Anya is incompetent," Mr. Grayson explained, leaning forward. His voice dropped lower. "They are claiming the heir, whoever that person might be, is unable to manage the company. They are using the tragic nature of your parents' death, the plane crash, the confusion, as evidence. They are arguing that no stable person would stay hidden for this long. They say the company is suffering from the uncertainty." "It's not," I said. "Innovatech is doing better than ever. You and I know that, but it's a good story for a judge." He slid a thick stack of papers across the table. "This is their petition. And this," he said, sliding a much thinner stack on top, "is our response." He handed me a simple pen. "I need you to sign this, Anya. It's an affidavit. It states that you are alive, that you are sound of mind, and that you intend to claim your inheritance on your 18th birthday, as stipulated by the trust your parents created." I picked up the pen. My hand was shaking so badly I could barely hold it. "They live in my parents' house," I whispered. They call them sentimental fools." Mr. Grayson's face hardened. "Your parents were brilliant, Anya. They were also very trusting. They appointed your uncle as your guardian in their will. They set up the stipend for your care. They assumed he would treat you as his own." "He does," I said, like something he scraped off his shoe. I took a deep breath. I pressed the pen to the paper. My signature was messy, but it was mine. "What happens now?" I asked, pushing the papers back. "Now we wait." He put the documents safely back into his briefcase. "Your uncle has forced our hand. He demanded an emergency board meeting to hear his petition. The board has granted it. It's scheduled for 2 weeks from now." I did the math in my head. That's my birthday. Yes, Mr. Grayson said. He intended it to be the day the trust expired. He planned to walk in, have the heir declared dead, and take control. He has just, unintentionally, planned his own removal. He paused, then reached into his vest pocket. He pulled out something small and flat. It was a simple, white plastic card. It looked like an old hotel key. In the center was a single, stylized silver letter I. It was the old Innovatech logo, the one my father designed. What is it? Your father gave this to me the day before their trip, Mr. Grayson said. He called it the Founder's Key. He said the company was getting too big, too polished. He worried people would forget what it was all about. This key opens one door. He made me promise to give it to you when the time was right. What door? He said you would know. Your uncle and his team have built a fortress of new technology, new servers, new security. But they never change the bones of a building, Anya. They just build on top of the old foundation. He pushed the key across the table. It felt cool and smooth in my hand. They think you are a ghost, Mr. Grayson said. It's time to show them you're not. I got off the bus 2 blocks early, walking the rest of the way to the house. I needed the cold air. The plastic key felt heavy in my pocket. It was a physical piece of my past, a past my aunt and uncle had tried to erase. When I opened the front door, the house was quiet, but it was a loud quiet. It felt wrong. Is that you, Anya? Aunt Helen called out. Her voice came from the main living room. I walked in. They were all there. Aunt Helen, Uncle Marcus, Chloe, and Liam. They were sitting on the white sofas, not talking. It looked like a photograph of a family, but a cold one. I asked you a question, Aunt Helen said. She was holding a glass of water. Yes, it's me. I was at the library. You were gone a long time, Liam said. He was staring at me. It was the first time he had looked me directly in the eyes in months. His stare was not friendly. It was a long assignment, I said. My heart was pounding. I hated lying, but I was getting good at it. Go to your room. We are having a private family discussion, Uncle Marcus said. His voice was flat, final. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. I went up the stairs, my feet silent again. But as I reached the top landing, I heard their voices start up again, low and angry. I stopped, just out of sight. I don't like it, Marcus, Aunt Helen said. Filing the petition was aggressive. It exposes us. It was necessary, my uncle snapped. The board was getting weak. They were talking about hiring an outside firm to find the heir. We had to take control of the narrative. Now we are the ones actively seeking a solution. We look responsible. And the girl? Aunt Helen said. My stomach twisted. Anya, what about her? She'll be 18. What if she knows something? There was a short, sharp laugh. It was Chloe. Anya? Mom? She doesn't even know how to use a dishwasher. She's a ghost. She doesn't know anything about anything. Your cousin is right, Uncle Marcus said. She is a non-issue, a sad, quiet girl. In 2 weeks, the trust will be dissolved, the assets will be transferred to board management, which we will lead, and we can finally move forward. Anya can be moved to a more appropriate housing situation. You mean kick her out, Liam said. I mean, Uncle Marcus said, his voice dropping, that our charity work will be complete. I didn't wait to hear more. I fled to my room and shut the door, locking it. My hands were shaking again, a non-issue. Charity work. I sat on my bed, the old laptop in front of me. I pulled the white plastic key from my pocket. Mr. Grayson said my father told him I would know what it opened. They never changed the bones of a building. I'd only been to Innovatech headquarters a few times. Once for a big company party just before the trip. But I had been there before that too. When I was very young, I remembered my father's office. It wasn't the huge glass corner office my uncle now occupied. My father's office was in a different part of the building, the old part. I pulled up a public floor plan of the Innovatech Tower on my laptop. The building was a sleek, new skyscraper, but I knew the company had started in an older, shorter building right next to it. When they built the new tower, they had connected the two. The old building was now listed as server wing and storage. It was where they kept the old equipment. It was a part of the building no one ever went to. I remembered a door. It was heavy, wooden, and painted a bright, cheerful blue. My father used to say it was his thinking door. While everyone else was installing glass walls, my father kept his wooden door, and it had a lock. A simple, old-fashioned keyhole. I looked at the key in my hand. It was for a physical lock, not an electronic scan pad. I had to get into that building. I had to get to that office. Before the board meeting, I needed to see what was behind that door. My father had left it for me for a reason. I needed an excuse to get inside. A powerful one. I took a breath. I unlocked my door and walked back down the stairs. They all stopped talking again when they saw me. They stared at me, their faces a mix of annoyance and surprise. I had interrupted them twice. "What is it now, Anya?" Aunt Helen demanded. "I'm sorry to interrupt," I said, forcing my voice to stay level. "My school counselor posted an email today. We're all required to set up a career day shadow before the end of the month." Uncle Marcus frowned. "And? I was wondering," I said, looking at the floor. "I know it's a lot to ask, but could I shadow Chloe or Liam just for one day at Innovatech?" The silence in the room was absolute. Chloe looked horrified. Liam just looked confused. Aunt Helen stared at me, her eyes narrowing. I could see her mind working. She was calculating. "Why on earth," Chloe began, "would you want to—" "That," Aunt Helen said, cutting her off, "is an excellent idea, Anya." She smiled. It was a thin, cold smile. I saw the angle she was playing. The poor, sad orphan, brought to the towering office, shown all the generosity of the family that took her in. It was a good look, especially right before a major board meeting. "You won't go with Chloe. You'll go with Liam," she said. "Tomorrow. Be ready at 7. "Thank you, Aunt Helen," I said. I turned and walked away. I could feel their eyes on my back. I went to my room, the plastic key clutched tight in my fist. Tomorrow. The Innovatech Tower was a spear of black glass. It punched straight into the sky. Liam badged us through the main security gates. The lobby was 3 stories high, with a waterfall running down one wall. The air smelled like clean metal and faintly ozone. "Right," Liam said, not looking at me. "This is the lobby." He was already walking toward the elevators, and I had to hurry to keep up. A few people in sharp suits said, "Morning, Liam." They glanced at me, in my plain jeans and old gray sweater, and then looked away. I was a smudge on their perfect glass world. "My desk is on the 24th floor, he said inside the elevator. It moved up so fast my stomach dropped. "Analytics. You'll sit with me." The 24th floor was one massive open room. It was loud. Hundreds of people sat at identical white desks, staring at glowing screens. The air thrummed with the sound of typing and quiet, urgent phone calls. "Here." Liam pointed to a small, empty stool at the end of his desk row. "Sit. Don't touch anything." He sat down, logged into his computer, and immediately started working. He had 3 monitors. I sat on the stool. For 2 hours I just watched. I watched the flow of the office. I watched people bring him reports. I saw my uncle's official corporate portrait on the far wall, next to a plaque that just said, "Our Leadership." There was no picture of my parents. It was almost 11 a.m. when Liam's phone buzzed on his desk. He picked it up. His face went pale. "What?" he whispered into the phone. "They responded? When?" He listened, his free hand gripping his mouse so hard his knuckles turned white. "Yes, yes. I'll be right there." He hung up and looked at me. his eyes wide with something I hadn't seen before. Panic. "Stay here," he said, his voice sharp. "I have a meeting, an important one. Do not move from this stool. Do not talk to anyone. Do you understand me?" "I understand," I said. He grabbed his key card and almost ran toward the elevators. The moment he was gone, I slipped off the stool. My legs were stiff. I walked away from the analytics department, keeping my head down. I looked like any other intern running an errand. I found the central elevator bank. Liam had used the main bank, the one for employees. I looked at the directory, floors 2030 departments. Floor 1, lobby. Floor S, service and storage. I pressed the button for the service elevator, hidden in an alcove by the kitchens. An empty steel-walled car opened. I got in. The doors closed, and I pressed S. The service floor was the opposite of the lobby. It was gray concrete, low ceilings. Pipes ran overhead, and the air smelled like dust and damp. There were no employees, just a few cleaning carts parked against a wall. I remembered the floor plan. The new tower was connected to the old building at the base. I followed the signs for archives and West Wing storage. I turned a corner and saw it. A modern glass turnstile with a guard station. A red light glowed on the scan pad. I needed a high-level key card. I stepped back, my heart sinking. I couldn't get through. I waited in the shadows of the corridor. A minute later, a man in a maintenance uniform pushed a heavy trash barrel toward the turnstile. He grunted, swiped his card, and the gate clicked open. He pushed the barrel through, while the gate was still open, and while he was bent over pushing the barrel, I slipped through behind him. He never looked up. I was in. This hallway was completely different. The floor was old scuffed tile. The lights were a humming, sickly yellow. It was silent. All the noise of the main office was gone. I walked past aisles of tall, metal shelves. They were piled high with old computer parts and boxes labeled with faded ink. I followed the hall until it ended, and there it was. It was exactly as I remembered. A heavy, solid wooden door, painted a bright, chipped blue. It looked completely out of place in this building of glass and steel. It had no electronic lock, just a small, simple keyhole. I pulled the white plastic key from my pocket. My hand was shaking. I slid the key into the lock. It fit. I turned it. There was a loud, heavy click. I pushed the heavy blue door. It scraped on the tile floor with a long, low groan. The air that hit me was cold, dry, and still. It smelled like old paper and dust. My hand felt along the wall inside the frame, searching. My fingers found a plastic toggle switch. I flicked it up. A single fluorescent light overhead sputtered, buzzed, and then clicked on, filling the room with weak, flickering light. This wasn't a storage room. It was an office. It was my father's office. Everything was exactly as I remembered it. It was frozen. A heavy wooden desk stood in the center, not the sleek glass tables they used upstairs. On the wall, instead of modern art, there were framed engineering diagrams and blueprints for the original Innovatech server. A row of thick black binders lined a metal shelf, their labels written by hand. I walked farther into the room. A photograph in a simple silver frame sat on the corner of the desk. I picked it up. The glass was coated in a thick layer of dust. I wiped it clean with the sleeve of my sweater. It was my mother and father. They were standing on this very floor years ago, wearing hard hats. The tower hadn't been built yet. They were young and they were smiling. My hand tightened on the frame. My uncle and aunt had erased them from the company's public history. They had removed their portraits from the lobby, but they had left this room, my father's real office, untouched. They couldn't erase what they never knew existed. I put the photo down carefully. My eyes went to the desk. Tucked against the wall was an old computer. It was the boxy beige kind from years ago. I looked behind it. It was plugged into the wall for power, but there was no network cable. It was isolated, safe. I reached out and pressed the power button on the front of the tower. The machine made a loud whirring sound as the fan started. It sounded impossibly loud in the silent room. The screen lit up, glowing a dull blue. Then, white letters appeared. Enter password. My heart sank. A password. From 3 years ago, I stared at the blinking cursor. What would he have used? My uncle always used complex strings of numbers, but my father was different. He always said the best security was simplicity, not complexity. I thought about what mattered to him. I thought about the files Mr. Grayson said he left. I typed on the loud, clicking keyboard, Innovatech. The screen flashed, access denied. I tried again. My mother's name, access denied. I stopped. I looked at the photograph of my smiling parents. I looked at the blueprints. He built this company for one reason. He wasn't sentimental, as my aunt claimed. He was specific. I took a breath. I typed my name, A-N-Y-A. I hit the enter key. The screen flashed, welcome. The desktop appeared. It was almost empty. There was no clutter. There was only one folder. It was in the center of the screen. It was labeled, for Anya. My breath caught. I moved the mouse and double-clicked the folder. It opened. Inside were 2 files. One was a text document, Trust Bylaws Private. The other was a video file, Message. I clicked on the document first. My hands were shaking. It was dense legal text, but I scanned it quickly. I found the section I was looking for. Article 4, Guardian Conduct. It stated, in plain language, that if the acting guardians, it named Marcus and Helen, were found by the heir to have acted with malice, or to have intentionally obscured the heir's identity from the board, or to have used company funds for personal gain beyond their approved stipend, their guardianship was immediately void, and their employment at Innovatech was to be terminated. I leaned back, breathing hard. He knew. My father had suspected. He had put this clause in to protect me from them. I looked at the second file. Message. I had to see it. I double-clicked the file. The screen flickered, and my father's face appeared. He looked tired, but he was smiling. He was sitting right here, in this chair. The blueprints were on the wall behind him. "Hello, Anya," he said, his voice. I hadn't heard his voice in 3 years. I forgot what it sounded like. "If you're seeing this," he said, "it means Mr. Grayson gave you the key. And it means we didn't make it back. Listen to me, Anya. There isn't much time. You have to be strong. You can't trust—" Clang. A loud metallic crash echoed from the hallway outside. I jumped, my hand slamming the mouse, pausing the video. "Hello?" A man's voice called out from the storage wing. "Is someone down here? Maintenance check." I looked at the computer. I looked at the door. I couldn't leave this here. Then I saw it. Plugged into the computer tower was a small black USB drive. My father had left it there. I dragged the For Anya folder onto the drive's icon. A small window popped up. Copying. The progress bar on the screen was agonizingly slow. Copying. 70%. Hello? Maintenance. The voice was closer now. A heavy thud vibrated through the floor, like a tool bag being dropped. Percent. I looked at the blue door. I could see the beam of a flashlight sweeping the floor under the gap. He was right outside. T5%. My heart was not pounding. It had stopped. I was completely still. Copying complete. The bar vanished. I grabbed the small USB drive and pulled it out of the port. My other hand moved to the power button on the computer tower. I held it down. The loud fan whirred and died. The screen went black. I grabbed the silver picture frame of my parents from the desk and shoved it into the pocket of my jeans. I stood up and hit the wall switch. The room went dark. I pulled the heavy blue door open, just enough to slip through. It scraped on the floor. "Who's there?" The man yelled. I didn't wait. I ran. I turned left, away from his voice, deeper into the storage wing. The yellow lights hummed overhead. I ran past shelves of metal and plastic. My footsteps echoed on the tile. I saw a red exit sign at the end of the aisle. It wasn't the way I came in. I shoved the crash bar. The door flew open and a loud alarm started to sound. A whoop, whoop, whoop that filled the concrete hall. I didn't care. I was in a main stairwell. I ran up. S floor. Lobby. Floor 2. I kept going. I ran all the way up to the 24th floor. My legs ached and my lungs burned. I pushed open the door to floor 24. The noise of the office hit me. The typing, the phones. No one looked up. The alarm from the basement was too far away to be heard here. I walked, trying to look calm, back toward the analytics department. My hair was damp with sweat. The USB drive was cutting into my palm. I saw Liam's desk. The stool was empty. I slid onto it just as my legs started to shake. I looked at the wall clock. 11:43 a.m. I had been gone for almost 45 minutes. Liam returned 10 minutes later. His face was pale and tight. He looked like he was going to be sick. He had obviously been in the emergency meeting I heard him called to. He looked at me. You're still here. You told me not to move, I said. He just grunted. He collapsed into his chair and stared at his 3 monitors, but he wasn't looking at them. He was seeing something else. He was terrified. He never spoke to me again for the rest of the day. At 5 o'clock, he just said, "Get your things. We're going." The car ride home was silent. He gripped the steering wheel so hard I thought it might crack. When we got to the house, it was empty. Aunt Helen and Uncle Marcus were not back yet. I went straight to my room. I locked the door. I sat on my bed, pulling out my old laptop. I plugged in the USB drive. My hands were steady now. The icon appeared. For Anya. I double-clicked the video file. Message. My father's face appeared. He was sitting in the chair I had just sat in. The blueprints were behind him. "Hello, Anya," he said. His voice was quiet, warm. It filled my room. "If you're seeing this, it means Mr. Grayson gave you the key. And it means we didn't make it back." He paused, and his eyes looked right at me. "Listen to me, Anya. There isn't much time. You have to be strong. You can't trust your uncle." My breath hitched. "Marcus is a good VP," my father continued, "but he's ambitious. He always resented your mother and me for starting Innovatech. He thought he deserved it. I put protections in the trust. The conduct clause. Mr. Grayson knows about it. But I also left you this." He held up an identical USB drive to the camera. "This drive contains everything. My original business plan, my private ledgers, and my personal key to the whole system. They've built new firewalls, new security, but they never changed the master code. It's all on this drive." His face softened. "Anya, this isn't about the company. It's about you. It's yours. Don't let them take your legacy. Don't let them erase us. I built this. I built this for you. Your mother and I. We love you. Never forget what we built. Never forget who you are." The video ended. The screen went black. I sat in the silence. I took the picture frame from my pocket and set it on my small desk. I looked at my parents. Never forget who you are. I heard the front door slam open downstairs. I heard shouting. I crept out of my room, the USB drive warm in my hand. I went to the top of the stairs, hiding in the shadows. Uncle Marcus, Aunt Helen, and Liam were in the entrance hall. They looked panicked. They responded. Uncle Marcus roared. His voice echoed off the cold glass walls. "Who?" Aunt Helen demanded, her voice high. "Grayson, the lawyer. He responded to our petition." "What did he say?" Liam asked. "He was shaking. He said—" Uncle Marcus paused, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. He said the heir is alive, that she is aware of the petition, and that she will be present at the board meeting tomorrow to personally address the motion. The hall was silent. "It's a bluff," Aunt Helen said, but her voice wavered. "A corporate ghost. They're trying to scare us out of the motion." "It's not a bluff," my uncle shouted, throwing his briefcase onto the floor. He filed an affidavit, Signed, he wouldn't risk perjury. The heir is real. She's here. After all this time. She is here. Who is it? Chloe asked. She had just walked in. Who could it be? It doesn't matter, my uncle snapped. We push forward. We claim incompetence. We paint this heir as an opportunist, a fraud. We have the board. We just need to hold the line. Aunt Helen took a shaky breath. And the girl, Anya? Her birthday. It's tomorrow. She's a child, Uncle Marcus said. She's irrelevant. She's leaving this house tomorrow one way or another. Now all of you get to sleep. We have a battle tomorrow. I went back to my room. I shut the door quietly. I looked at the clock. It was almost midnight. It was my 18th birthday. Irrelevant. I held the USB drive. Tomorrow was not a battle. It was an execution. I did not sleep. At 6 a.m., I dressed. Not in my usual gray sweater, but in a simple dark blue dress I had bought with the last of my own small savings. At 7 a.m., a black car sent by Mr. Grayson was waiting for me at the end of the street. I walked out of my uncle's house for the last time. No one saw me go. We arrived at the Innovatech Tower at 8:50 a.m. Mr. Grayson met me in the lobby. He was not carrying a briefcase. He was only holding a single thin folder. "Are you ready, Anya?" he asked, his voice calm. "Yes," I said, "I am." We did not use the service elevator. We took the main glass elevator, the express car, straight to the 50th floor. The boardroom. The doors opened onto a silent, carpeted hall. 2 guards stood outside a set of tall, dark wooden doors. They nodded at Mr. Grayson and opened them for us. The room was long, a single black table polished so highly I could see the ceiling reflected in it. At the far end, a massive screen was dark. The air was cold. They were all there, my aunt, my Uncle Chloe and Liam sat on one side, flanked by their lawyers. Uncle Marcus looked confident. He smiled at the board members who filled the other chairs. The mood in the room was tense, but it was on his side. Then we walked in. The room went completely, absolutely silent. Every head turned. Chloe's mouth fell open. Liam went white. I saw his hand start to shake. Aunt Helen's eyes narrowed into slits. Uncle Marcus stood up. He looked at me, then at Mr. Grayson. His face was a mask of confusion and rage. "Mr. Grayson," my uncle said, his voice dangerously smooth. "This is a closed board meeting. And you brought the girl? Security, please escort Anya Thorne out. This is not a place for children." "She is not a child," Mr. Grayson said. His voice was not loud, but it filled the room. "And she is not the girl." He stepped to the side, leaving me standing in the doorway. "Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you are here to vote on Mr. Thorne's petition to have the Innovatech heir declared incompetent or deceased. That vote will not be necessary. Mr. Grayson looked at me. "May I introduce Ms. Anya Thorne, sole heir to the Founders Trust. As of this morning, on her 18th birthday, she is the controlling shareholder of this company." The silence was broken by my Aunt Helen. She let out a short, sharp laugh. "This is insane. He's mad. Marcus, he's mad." "Anya?" Uncle Marcus said, staring at me. He was not laughing. He was connecting the dots, the shadow day, the petition response. "Anya, what is this?" I walked forward. I felt steady. My footsteps made no sound on the thick carpet. I walked past my family. I walked past the board. I went to the head of the table, to the empty chairman's seat. "This," I said, my voice clear, "is a board meeting. You lied," Liam whispered from the table. "All this time." "No," I said, looking at him. I just lived with you. You were the ones who were lying. This is a farce, Uncle Marcus roared, slamming his hand on the table. Members of the board, this is a hostile trick. This girl is my ward. She is a troubled, unstable child. She is clearly not competent to. Are you sure you want to use that word, Uncle? I asked. I took the small black USB drive from my pocket. I looked at the terminal at the head of the table. You've all forgotten what my parents built, I said to the room. You talk about the Founders Trust like it's a problem. You erased their names from the lobby. You've spent 3 years trying to make me a ghost. I plugged the drive into the port. The large screen at the end of the room flickered to life. I think it's time you met my father. I clicked the file. My father's face, young and smiling, filled the screen. He was sitting in the blue-doored office. The boardroom was silent as his voice filled the air. Listen to me, Anya. There isn't much time. You have to be strong. You can't trust your uncle. Marcus is a good VP, but he's ambitious. He always resented your mother and me for starting Innovatech. Aunt Helen made a small, strangled sound. Uncle Marcus looked like he had been struck. Every board member was staring, unblinking, at the screen. I stopped the video. He knew, I said quietly. He knew you would try this. He left me everything. The original bylaws, the ledgers, and this. I clicked to the next file. The text was large on the screen. Article 4. Guardian Conduct, Mr. Grayson spoke. Article 4 of the Trust, gentlemen, stipulates that if the acting guardians, Marcus and Helen Thorne, were found to have acted with malice or to have used their position to attempt to seize control of the trust assets, their employment at Innovatech and that of any family members they appointed is to be immediately and permanently terminated. You can't, Aunt Helen shrieked, standing up. We took you in. We fed you. You ungrateful little... You took my parents' stipend, I said, cutting her off. My voice was cold. You lived in their house. You worked for their company, and you tried to steal it from me. You called me charity. You called me irrelevant. You were wrong. The chairman of the board, an older man I had never seen, cleared his throat. He looked at my uncle. Marcus, is this true? The petition. It was an attempt to seize control. My uncle said nothing. He just stared at me. His mask of confidence was gone. He looked old. I looked at the chairman. It is true. And as the new controlling shareholder, I am invoking Article 4. I looked at my family, Marcus Thorne, Helen Thorne, Chloe Thorne, Liam Thorne. You are fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you from the building. You are not to touch your computers. No, Chloe whispered, and she finally started to cry. Aunt Helen pointed a shaking finger at me. You will regret this. You will run this company into the ground, you foolish girl. No, I said. I won't. The guards, who had been waiting by the door, moved in. They were quiet and professional. They motioned for my family to stand. One by one they got up. Liam wouldn't look at me. Chloe was sobbing. Aunt Helen was shaking with silent rage. My uncle, he just looked empty. He walked out, and he didn't look back. The heavy doors clicked shut. The room was quiet again. It was just me, Mr. Grayson, and the board. I pulled the silver picture frame of my parents from my pocket. I set it on the polished black table right in front of my chair, facing the board. I sat down, in the main chair. Good morning, I said to the room. My name is Anya Thorne. My parents founded this company. I have their original plans. Let's get to work.